There is a point in life when the noise becomes impossible to ignore. The endless pressure, the constant striving, the feeling that no matter how hard you push, something is still missing. You wake up tired. You go to sleep worried. Your mind never truly rests. Every day feels like another battle waiting to happen. You keep searching for answers. You keep trying to fix every problem. You keep telling yourself that if you work harder, think smarter, or plan better, everything will eventually fall into place. But somehow, the burden only grows heavier. The truth is that many people spend years carrying responsibilities they were never meant to carry alone. They try to control every outcome. They try to predict every challenge. They try to protect themselves from every disappointment. Yet the more they grip tightly, the more exhausted they become. The human heart was never designed to live under that kind of weight. Sooner or later, the cracks begin to show. Anxiety starts stealing your peace. Fear begins shaping your decisions. Doubt whispers into your thoughts, and frustration settles into your spirit. You smile in front of others, but inside, you feel drained. You keep moving forward, yet your soul feels stuck. Then something unexpected happens. You reach the end of your own strength. Not because you failed, not because you are weak, but because you finally discover that your strength has limits. And that realization can become the beginning of a miracle. Many people think surrender is giving up. They imagine it as defeat. They see it as admitting that they cannot handle life. But surrendering to God is not quitting. It is trusting. It is releasing what was never yours to control. It is stepping out of the driver's seat and allowing God to lead. For some people, surrender happens during a crisis, a broken relationship, a financial struggle, a painful loss, a health battle. For others, surrender happens quietly. No dramatic moment, no public announcement. Just a private conversation between a weary heart and a faithful God. A moment when you finally say, I cannot do this alone anymore. And that simple prayer changes everything, because God does His greatest work in hearts that are willing to trust Him. The moment surrender becomes real, a shift begins. Your circumstances may not change overnight. The challenges may still exist. The obstacles may still stand in front of you. But something inside you becomes different. You no longer feel responsible for carrying the entire world on your shoulders. You stop trying to force every door open. You stop chasing solutions that leave you empty. You stop fighting battles that belong to God. Instead, you begin to walk with confidence. Not confidence in yourself, confidence in Him. You start believing that God sees what you cannot see. You trust that He understands the future better than you do. You believe that His timing is wiser than your own. And that trust creates peace. A peace that does not depend on perfect circumstances. A peace that remains steady even when life feels uncertain. That is one of the greatest gifts surrender brings. Peace replaces panic. Hope replaces despair. Faith replaces fear. Suddenly, you realize that God has been working all along. Even during the seasons when you thought nothing was happening. Even during the nights when you felt forgotten. Even during the moments when your prayers seemed unanswered. God was never absent. He was preparing something greater. Many times we ask God to change our situation, but God first wants to transform us. He shapes our character. He strengthens our faith. He teaches us patience. He develops wisdom inside us. And often, that process begins when we finally stop resisting His guidance. Think about how much energy is wasted trying to control things beyond your reach. Trying to change people, trying to force outcomes, trying to predict tomorrow, trying to solve problems that have not even happened yet. All of that effort creates stress. All of that pressure steals joy. All of that worry drains strength. But surrender allows you to let go, not because you stop caring, because you start trusting. There is a huge difference. Trust says that God is already working. Trust says that God is still faithful. Trust says that no challenge is bigger than His power. When you truly understand that, your perspective changes. You stop seeing every obstacle as the end of the story. You start seeing obstacles as opportunities for God to move. You stop focusing on what you lost. You begin noticing what God is building. You stop measuring your future by your current circumstances. You start measuring it by God's promises. That is when hope becomes stronger than fear. Many people miss blessings because they refuse to release control. They keep holding tightly to old hurts, old disappointments, old regrets, old versions of themselves. Yet God cannot lead you into something new while you are chained to the past. Sometimes surrender means forgiving. Sometimes surrender means waiting. Sometimes surrender means walking away. Sometimes surrender means taking a step of faith when the path ahead is unclear. Whatever form it takes, surrender always requires trust. And trust always requires courage. Because faith often asks you to move before you see the outcome. It asks you to believe before you receive. It asks you to trust before you understand. That is not easy, but it is powerful. Every great transformation begins with a decision. A decision to place your life into God's hands. A decision to stop carrying burdens that were crushing your spirit. A decision to believe that God's plan is greater than your own. And when that decision is made, everything starts changing. Your prayers become deeper. Your heart becomes lighter. Your mind becomes calmer. Your faith becomes stronger. You begin noticing blessings you once overlooked. You begin seeing opportunities where you once saw obstacles. You begin experiencing gratitude instead of constant frustration. God starts opening doors you could never open yourself. He starts providing solutions you never imagined. He starts guiding you in ways that only make sense when you look back. The journey is not always easy. Challenges still come. Difficult days still happen. Life does not suddenly become perfect, but you are no longer walking alone. That changes everything, because when God carries what you cannot carry, you discover a new kind of freedom. A freedom that comes from trust. A freedom that comes from faith. A freedom that comes from knowing that your future is in the hands of a loving God. So if you are tired today, if you feel overwhelmed, if you have been trying to hold everything together on your own, maybe it is time to release what has been weighing you down. Maybe it is time to stop fighting battles that are not yours to fight. Maybe it is time to trust God with every fear, every question, and every uncertainty. Because the breakthrough you are seeking may begin with a simple act of surrender. Not surrender to circumstances, not surrender to fear, not surrender to defeat. Surrender to God. And when you finally place everything in His hands, you may discover that He has been waiting all along to show you what is possible. When faith becomes greater than control, that is when hearts are renewed. That is when burdens become lighter. That is when peace becomes real. That is when purpose becomes clear. That is when lives are transformed. And that is when God changes everything.